I just bought 3 new locomotives for my train set. A new HHP-8 to help with the passenger operations, a Union Pacific FEF, and a power car for the Acela Express. This one is powered. I bought it to see if having a powered unit on both ends of the train would make it run faster. We're going to test the FEF by Rivarossi first. And by the way, this picture is a perfect representation of my experience with it. This thing loves to derail. In fact, it absolutely hates being on the track for more than a few seconds at a time. I'd even go so far as to say that it's afraid of the rails and is actively trying to escape them. This locomotive has plastic train set style couplers, unfortunately, but fortunately they can be swapped out for knuckle couplers. Just gotta be careful with this thing. These couplers snap in place and you can yank them out and place new couplers in. These couplers that I bought might be a little bit too long for this purpose though. Yeah, this coupler is like twice the length, so it might have issues with the coupler sticking out too far. But I'm going to try to install it anyway, see what happens. You just place it in the coupler plate and then push it in until it snaps in place. Yeah, that coupler is way too long. I'm going to have to get a shorter one. But in the meantime, let's at least see if it will attach to the train. Now, with this steam locomotive, the 4 leading wheels are on a pivot, so they can move pretty far to the left and the right. This is useful for train set curves. The drive wheels do not have that much play in them, but they can turn a little bit. And of course the trailing wheels can move pretty far as well. The tender is not quite as flexible. The front bogie can turn. And the last axle of the rear bogie can also turn. The rest of the axles do not turn, but the middle axles can slide a little bit to the left and right to help with cornering. Getting this train on the track is a logistical nightmare. First you got to get the leading wheels on the track, obviously. Getting the driver wheels on the track is really hard. Especially if it's on a curve. And there have been times where I thought the middle wheels were on the track and then they slipped off on a curve. So you have to be really careful. It looks like the front and rear axle of the driving bogie can actually slide a little bit. There's actually a little bit of play in them. Now I gotta get the rear axles on the track. Sometimes I have to lift the entire locomotive up to get these axles on the track, which of course derails the driving bogies, and then I have to lift these back on the track. My goodness. I know models are supposed to be realistic, but you don't have to make it that difficult to operate this steam locomotive. My goodness. Alright, I think it's on the track. Oh yeah, and I've also noticed that sometimes when running in reverse, the wheels spark and that causes a short circuit. Now getting the tender on the track is even harder, because the rear bogie is virtually inflexible. think it's on the track. Yeah, it looks like it's on the track. Now getting it coupled to the steam locomotive is even harder. There's a drawbar over here. It has to be aligned perfectly. But the issue with the drawbar is that sometimes it slants down a little bit, and that can cause it to slip off. And it's also very difficult to know where the piece that's supposed to attach to this drawbar is without lifting the tender off the track, which of course means that it's derailed, so I have to put it back on the track after attaching it. Now where is it? Alright, I think it's attached now. Now I have to very carefully lift it up to get it back on the track without decoupling it. Ugh, the rear bogie is derailed. That's very difficult to get on the track. Okay, I think it's on the track. Oops. This rear coupler is not going to have a lot of play because of how long it is, so it's probably not going to work. But I'm going to try it anyway. I did order some smaller couplers too to try those out. They just haven't arrived yet. And these couplers only appear to come in 2 sizes. So if the other size I ordered doesn't work, then that's pretty much it. Alright, let's try to reverse it. I have to go really slow in reverse because it derails very easily in reverse. Just like a real steam locomotive. I don't know why it derailed though. The tender derailed. It might have been this coupler. Now that I think about it. I hope not. Alright, let's try this again. It derailed again. The coupler got caught on the points. Man. Let's try this again. Okay, let's try this again. Alright, it's coupled to the train, hopefully. Alright, the coupler did work. He was able to attach to the train. So now let's see if he's strong enough to pull the entire train. And if so, how fast can he go with it? I think one of the cars derailed. I had to be really careful not to let the wheels slip because they can spark when that happens, and that sometimes causes a short circuit. Alright, while we're here, let's look at the coupler. The unrealistically long coupler. It's a little bit too low, as you can see. But it is holding. Now let's see which car derailed. The tender probably derailed when it coupled to the passenger car. Having the coupler stretching this far back might cause some issues on curves. But we'll see. Again, this is only a temporary fix. Also ordered a shorter coupler to see if that one will work better. Ah, he left the train and derailed. Ah, what is with this thing? My goodness. Ah, the tender decoupled from the locomotive. You know what? That's one thing that annoys me about steam locomotives. Like, in real life, you can decouple the tender from the locomotive, but there's no reason to need to do that on a model train. So, in my opinion, it should just be permanently coupled. Because, like, why would you want to decouple the tender anyway? It's not like you can attach anything else other than a tender to it. I mean, I guess that could be handy if the tender broke down and you needed to replace it. Let's try this again. Well, at least the coupler locks in place. Oh, no it didn't. It decoupled. Wow. Still having some teething issues with the steam locomotive. It still derails very easily. Oh my goodness. Right, this bogie on this locomotive, like, I don't know how they do this in real life, because this bogie is next to impossible to get to go around a curve. Like, it's constantly scraping against the rails. Where are you at? Yeah, like, just pushing it manually, I can feel it scraping against the rail. And this rear bogie keeps giving up. Alright, let's take the steam locomotive off the track and try something else for now. Just gonna put them in the storage track for now. Let's try the HHP-8s. Let's see. Number 664 is the older one. That one over here, number 656, is the oldest one that I have, which doesn't work anymore. 664 is the one I bought to replace it, and 650 is a one I bought to see if I could run it in double header mode. Alright, the coupler works on this one. Now, one thing I've noticed about number 650 when I bought it is that the pantographs have stronger springs on them. So I'm thinking the person who originally owned this meant for it to run on a catenary layout. I don't really have plans to use catenary on my layout because it sounds like a lot of hassles after a lot of things I've read about it. Okay, number 650 is connected to number 664. Now, when running in double header, it's better to use metal couplers, but a lot of couplers that I bought do not fit on the HHP-8, so I'm not really sure what to do about that issue. In the future, I might try longer couplers, maybe. Come on now, you can do it. Oh no, they decoupled from each other. Now, one annoying thing about number 650 is that it cannot operate in reverse. That F on the locomotive tells you which way is the forward-facing side of the locomotive. And for some reason, when operating in reverse, well, for the most part, it does not operate in reverse. Let me show you. Have it set to reverse now. For some reason, it still tries to go forward when it's set to reverse. And then when it realizes it can't do that, it just turns off. There's probably some crossed wire in it somewhere. See, the headlights are still coming on even though it's set to reverse. And it will not operate in reverse. I cannot get this thing to go in reverse to save my life. It only wants to go forward. Okay, I switched the locomotive so that number 664 is leading and number 650 is behind it. Let's see if that yields better results. I think one of them is dragging the other one. Well, it seems to work with both locomotives attached to each other. The slower one just has to be in the back or something. Anyway, I bought a powered unit to go in the back of the Acela Express. So now there are two powered units on the train. I suspected that since the train set comes with just 3 passenger cars, maybe the first locomotive was being weighed down too much, and that was why it wasn't going that fast. So to help it, I put a powered unit on both ends of the train. I think one of the cars might be derailed. Now, one slight problem with this is that one of the locomotives is slightly faster than the other, so I have to accelerate the train a little bit sharply to prevent it from derailing. I have to accelerate it beyond a certain speed where, for some reason, the derailment doesn't happen. But one positive side to this is that I can now run the train in both directions without it derailing. Earlier, the train would always derail when the locomotive was pushing. But now, since one of them is pulling and the other one is pushing, I don't have to worry about that. So now I can run it in this direction as well. Now, sometimes the car that's in the back of the train derails when I'm using power cars on both sides, but usually it doesn't happen. Okay, I brought the steam locomotive back in order to replace its coupler. I bought a much smaller coupler in the mail as well because I wasn't sure which size to get. This one is about the same size as the coupler it comes with, so I shouldn't have any issues when I use that one instead. Don't know what to do with these couplers now because now I have absolutely no use for them. I don't know what to do with these longer couplers now because I have absolutely zero use for them. But I removed the old coupler and I'm about to install the new one. These just snap in place very carefully. Alright. This coupler doesn't really seem that flexible though. It doesn't move that far to the left or the right. So it's probably going to cause some issues when going around curves. Anyway, time to get the steam locomotive back on the track. It's best to do it on a straight section of track because it's a lot easier. But even then, it's still very, very tedious. There's no point in even attempting to fully re-rail the train until after you've attached the locomotive to the coupler. Because once you get it on the track, you still have to practically take it off the track completely in order to attach the coupler to it. Attach the tender. And again, I don't understand why you would make it so that you can even detach the tender from the locomotive. What should be done is the tender should be attached to the locomotive with a drawbar that is screwed in place at both the locomotive and the tender. That way, it'll only detach when you want to unscrew it from the locomotive. But the way it is now, if it goes over the slightest incline, the tender will decouple. And I've had this happen on test runs, and it's really annoying since you can't attach the steam locomotive to anything unless it's attached to a tender. Also, one thing that really annoys me about HO scale steam locomotives is they very rarely make front couplers for them, even though in real life most steam locomotives have front couplers, if not all of them. Okay, very carefully get these wheels on the track. I'm not sure if the guide wheels and the trailing wheels actually support the locomotive because the way they move, it doesn't feel like they're attached to the frame at all. The tender is the hardest thing to put on the track. Ah, shoot, it decoupled. That's the thing. Sometimes just putting it on the track decouples it from the locomotive. Not all of the wheels on this tender are flexible. Only the rear axle on this rear bogie can turn. Only the rear axle of the rear bogie can turn. The front bogie can turn completely though. And this tender derails very easily on curves, and I just realized that I put the steam locomotive on the wrong track. Luckily there's an interlocking here, so I'm going to try to use that and see what happens. Because it'll take way too long to take the steam locomotive off the track and put it on a different one. The problem is the Acela Express is on the track and it might try to move when I try to move the steam locomotive. Alright, gotta move the steam locomotive into position to go around this junction. Is it? For some reason the steam locomotive stopped, but the Acela Express is still trying to move. What's going on here? What in the world? The rear axles are hovering above the track. I don't know how that's even possible. I don't know what's going on here. What in the world did you do? I don't know why that's doing that. This curve is not that narrow that it shouldn't be able to go around it. Alright, so the steam locomotive is completely derailed. I cannot get these rear axles on the track. They absolutely refuse to. And look at this. The tender is so close that it's actually rubbing against the locomotive. Okay, well, interestingly, this drawbar has two sections where the tender can be coupled. So you can couple it a little bit further if you're having issues with it derailing on curves. The only problem is the further you attach it from the locomotive, the more easily it can detach from the locomotive if it goes across the slightest incline in track gradient. Which again is why I wish it was just permanently screwed into the locomotive with the drawbar. Because look at this, now I'm struggling to get it back on the track and coupling it at the same time. It's so stubborn too. Most of my time is wasted just trying to get this coupled to the locomotive. I had to practically derail it just to couple it. But the act of putting it back on the track might decouple it from the locomotive again. One of the middle axles is still derailed. Come on. Okay. Finally got all 14 of these tender bogies and 14 of these wheels on the track. Now I just gotta figure out how to get the locomotive back on the track. Come on, middle axle. Please get back on the track. Okay, I think it's on the track now. Alright. The lever that I was using for this switch is broken, so I'm going to have to manually switch it. Thankfully it does have manual levers. These switches are actually quite fragile though. Okay, I'm going to use this power pack to send this locomotive over the interlocking. I'm hoping that it'll be able to turn sharply enough to go around this interlocking. But most of the trains that I have cannot make it around this interlocking, even though it is the widest interlocking that this company sells. Ah, it's short-circuited. That's another issue that I've been having with these switches a lot. Just trying to move the train from one track to the other causes it to short circuit. And then it just won't go anywhere. A lot of times I've had to drag the train from one track to the other. It does help though if all the power packs that are connected to both tracks are set in the same direction. So let me try that again. Okay, it was actually able to make it over the junction. That's surprising because most of the trains that I have derail on this interlocking. Alright, let me reverse the Acela Express back to its original position. Alright. This steam locomotive is kind of long, a little bit longer than a lot of the other stuff I have, so it gets dangerously close to the other train on this curve. Alright, now I'm going to try to reverse it over to this passenger train. Please do not derail this time. It takes way too much time to put you back on the track. Alright. Is it coupled? Alright. I did a tug test and it's connected. So let's try to get it moving. Ah, he decoupled from the train. What should we do about that? I wonder. Maybe he could double head with another locomotive. First, I need to find one that has a similar top speed to him. Let's see, I got an F7A that is not from the same company, but is also DC. Maybe if I couple both of these to the passenger train, they won't decouple. The steam locomotive might be a little bit faster than the diesel. Double heading with DC locomotives usually only works if they have the same top speed. Alright, they're all connected. Let's see if we can get the train moving for once. It looks like the steam locomotive is dragging the diesel right now. Steam locomotive is wheel slipping a lot. What in the world? It just short-circuited all of a sudden. Yeah, that's another issue with the steam locomotive. I don't know why, but it just randomly short circuits at random intervals. And I think it's the driving wheels that do that, because on these curves, sometimes two or more of the driving wheels come off the track. And when that happens, it short circuits. So it's a little bit tedious to deal with. Probably should have gotten a smaller steam locomotive now that I think about it. Or one that's a bit more flexible around curves. I don't know. But at least we finally got the train moving. Ah, he decoupled from the locomotive. It always short circuits at that one section of the track, and I don't know why. It just went to a screeching halt. I don't know what it's doing. It could be because it was a very cheaply made steam locomotive. Who knows? Okay, something is derailed now. Actually, no. Nothing seems to be derailed. I don't know what happened there. Okay, so a bit of an issue with decoupling, and at certain locations the steam locomotive short circuits. So, oh yeah, there's also a very strong electric smell coming from it after I run it. So I don't know what that's all about, because none of the other locomotives I have smell like that. So I don't know. It could be a problem with how it's designed. Okay, so this does prevent it from decoupling from the passenger cars most of the time, having a locomotive attached behind the tender. But I want to know if it's strong enough to pull the train by itself. I don't think they make metal couplers for this brand of locomotive, unfortunately. That would help a lot with the decoupling issues. Also, this coupler is not very flexible. It doesn't bend that much, and that's also an issue. Okay, I'm gonna try again to run it by itself and see what happens. It is strong enough to pull the train on its own. It always decouples right at that location. I don't know why though, because none of the other locomotives I have decouple from the cars at that section of track. Let's try to reverse it and see what happens. Okay, he's coupled up again. It always tries to stop right at that one section of track, and I don't know why. It decoupled again. Why? Why can you not stay connected to the train? I swear, the steam locomotive lives to cause me as much trouble as possible. Now it's derailed and it's short-circuited. Why? Man. Well, one thing that's very realistic about this locomotive is it's very high maintenance, just like a real steam locomotive. Like, my goodness, every time I turn around, I need to stop it for something. Oh, look at that. The rear driving wheel came off the track when I tried to reverse it. And that's probably why it short-circuited. Okay, it's on the track now. I still don't know why it keeps short-circuiting though. Alright, time to unplug and replug the power pack. Let's try again to reverse onto the train. Is it coupled? Alright, it's coupled. But it's still going to derail at that one section of track. Now something else is derailed. Oh wow. It derailed and it short-circuited all at once. This locomotive is getting a 1-star review. Okay, where did it derail? The guide rails, the guide wheels are on the track. Oh, the rear axle. It's always the rear driving axle that keeps derailing, and I don't know why. And whenever it does, it short-circuits the train. At least it's still connected to the passenger car this time. I still don't know why it keeps decoupling at that one section of track, though. It's kind of annoying. This might end up being the last steam locomotive I purchased for this train set. It's so far caused me way too much trouble.